Greetings and good tidings, you good people. Welcome to Stone by Stone, an Edgewater Castle podcast, where we peel back the layers of the beautiful game like the 32-paneled onion that it is. Join me, Andrew Swanson, your host, as we engage in some insightful conversations with some very remarkable individuals. These brave souls will share their unique perspectives on the world and its game, their personal narratives, and how football has woven itself into the fabric of their lives like the thread in a highly personalized quilt. A heartfelt thank you to our production sponsors, Tightrope Recording, for their masterful sound engineering, and to our dedicated listeners. Your continued support means the absolute world to us, so thank you for it. Now, hear ye, gather round the hearth, pour something literally or figuratively warm into your cups, and welcome to Stone by Stone. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, abuelitas, hermanas, hermanos, welcome back to the pod. I'm Andrew Swanson, President and General Manager of Edgewater Castle Football Club, and very excited to host this episode of our new podcast. For those of you who are new here, welcome. We're really figuring this thing out on the fly. I'll tell you what, it's been a really fun project so far, but things are going to change. We're going to be recording it in different places. We'll always have different guests. Sometimes we might have guest hosts. So this thing is going to continue to evolve, but I'm very grateful for all of you listening, and I'm very grateful to my guest this evening, Roberto Cardano. I am very grateful to have you here. You're a player for Edgewater Castle Football Club. You have been for a few years. That's how we got to know each other. And you're also someone who's just had a very fascinating life in soccer. So I'm very excited to have you here with us this evening. My first question's pretty light. Tell me what you remember about your childhood. I'm just kidding. We can start a little more simply than that. First off, what's your experience so far with Edgewater Castle? Like, how was what's your first memory of joining the club, and sort of how you ended up in this dark place on this Monday evening on an undisclosed date?
It's only dark because of daylight savings. So
it's true.
That's not bad.
It's true. I can't tell you what time it is. It's a little before 8 o'clock, but it was already pretty much this dark at around 4:30 today. So, yeah, we're really in the thick of it here in Chicago. That'll give you some indication. It's not June, I'll tell you that much.
Unfortunately not. With the weather.
Unfortunately not.
For the question, back to when I first met any of you guys, you, James, Edgar, some of the first people that I got introduced to with Edgewater Castle. I had come back from COVID, where my university stopped any and all sports activity. So I hadn't touched a ball, I hadn't run, and through a mutual friend of an ex-player, Edgar, I showed up to play a friendly, nobody knowing me, didn't know which team I was supposed to play for at the friendly, and that's where I was lucky enough to meet a bunch of you guys and people I still see with the club. And I felt a lot more welcome than I had in other instances in the U.S. with soccer in particular. But it was a really fun time. I was way out of shape.
As were we all, I'm sure, at that point. We were all loaded up on sourdough and, trying to learn how to do yoga for the first time. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but continue. Sorry.
Basically, a lot of yoga and baking happened too, and not much running or moving or getting to spend time playing with the ball like I had the previous 22 years of my life. So it was a nice restart. Mostly I had just moved to Chicago, just started a new job, didn't know many people. So one of the things that football, soccer has helped me a lot throughout my life is getting to know the right people, making friends that are worthwhile, even if I don't know if that's the right word, but people I connect with, no matter where they're from, where they grew up, just a soccer ball and the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's sort of gonna be a really nice segue into some stuff later on. So thank you for planting that seed early in this episode. But what do you do? What's your day job? Like what's your career in Chicago here outside of football?
So outside of football, I went to Purdue for my engineering undergrad, and
Ooh, la-di-da, an engineer.
after I studied a lot and I didn't sleep too much because of studying,
Sure.
I found a job here in Chicago, which was one of my favorite cities in the US. One of the things I think a lot of people from New York may disagree with, but it's a clean New York where you get the big city, all the different things to do, just that there's not trash everywhere.
I don't know if you know this, but actually, I got to give my props to New York City right now because they now, for the first time in their history, I believe, have trash receptacles on the sidewalk now. So they don't just put their trash right on the street, on the sidewalk next to where tourists walk and stuff. They don't do that anymore as of year 2024.
Oh.
So it's only been what? They only spent about 180 years with their trash on the street. So props to New York. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, well, New York's moving up, obviously.
Yeah, moving on up in the world. You love to see it.
I basically moved to Chicago because with the visa situation of being an international student in the US, you can't really work wherever you want. And with what I picked, it's not easier to find a job in the aerospace sector. So I found an Italian company where I do engineering, just not the aerospace kind, and we design automated systems for mass consumer goods companies.
Okay, so I understood like 30% of the words you just said. Aerospace engineering, was that your focus at school?
Yep, that's what I majored in.
Okay. And what was the like ideal scenario? Did you want to like do NASA stuff? Did you want to do like working for Boeing? Like what was your hope in that career? What's the like is that the idea basically?
In the career, when you go to Purdue, it's one of the few places where you get to study a bit of both. You do the aeronautical and the astronautical. I never really cared for planes and whatnot. So working for Bombardier, Gulfstream, just jet companies
Sure.
or airlines wasn't what really intrigued me. I wanted to do rockets and design rockets, not do rockets, but design, develop, R&D, anything in that realm. Just that I'm not American, so can't work there for now.
Yeah, no, I that you know, I can understand why America has specific. Knowing America, let me put it that way. I can understand why they have sort of specific regulations on who gets to build rockets here, which, you know, they end up everywhere. So who's counting? Anyway, that's fascinating. I was not completely aware that your background was sort of in the like engineering world of like essentially jet propulsion. That's fascinating to me. That's so cool. Do you have any fascination with any kinds of engineering that are more rudimentary? Are you a guy that like is interested in working on cars? Or are you a guy that's more like theoretically thinking about how to design things?
For me, I love cars, but I don't want to spend 8 hours working on a car. Driving it, totally. Looking at the engine looks amazing, but it's more like you mentioned, the theoretical part and design, development, kind of understanding something or trying to get a solution from a problem is what I've always been more interested in. The repetition or learning how to screw in, screw out certain portions of a vehicle. I wish I knew how to do better, but I spent more time on the theoretical side.
Right, yeah. You're like designing the threads and so on. Got it. Okay, cool. Well, that's amazing. This might be a weird question, but is there any like time you spent in both this very, very kind of selective field and the game? Are there things that you sort of have discovered in the game or in your work as an engineer that you sort of like have noticed in the other. Does that make sense? Have you like seen things on the field where you're like, oh, that's kind of like this thing, or things like that?
I'm gonna get a little nerdy.
Let's go
now.
Roberto.
Little things.
I had no idea this is what we were going to talk about. This is the beauty of the pod, people.
Little things like aerodynamics, which is something that you study extensively in my major. You don't really think about it much, but every time you kick a ball, there's some sort of aerodynamics involved.
Yeah, it's going right through the air.
Obviously,
going through the air.
Obviously, we're not going to talk about the different aerodynamic drag and lift with our teammates on the field, but learning those engineering things and being detail oriented, I feel, is something that translates onto the field, where you try to pick out those little things and details that are put you over the top, but it's really just about the aerodynamics. Watching the flight of the ball, if it's math or if it's just watching the ball fly, I enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. The memory I have, it's not my memory, but I saw videos of it on YouTube, is the famous Roberto Carlos free kick, right? Which is the like outside of the foot. I remember, I think I saw that way before I actually got interested in soccer, kind of because of what you're talking about, that like it doesn't really make sense. Like when you think about other sports, like I've seen a curveball before, right? In baseball, or you've seen like a really impressive, a Steph Curry 3 or whatever from way out. And like that's amazing physics, but nothing really moves like a really perfectly hit soccer ball by someone like Roberto Carlos around a wall and into the corner. Like I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, okay, there's something special at play here. And I sort of feel like it is like, yeah, it's aerodynamics. It's like the physics of pressure, where, when, etc. It's like how you make a satellite like tilt around, kind of, It's
literally all of those things.
Maybe I should go to Purdue for a career. No, that's incredible. I did not know that. So what's your favorite? This is going to be kind of a little bit of a tangent, but what's your favorite like kind of pass as a player? You know what I mean? In terms of like, you play on the outside a lot, so you're either sending balls into runners, or I think we're gonna be okay. I'm not really sure what's going on, but
It's also an audio podcast, so for those that are watching.
Special effects.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't watching, there's maybe like a whole family of ghosts in here above us who are clanking away. There's a lot of Jacob Marley from Christmas Carol vibes about this place right now, but we're going to continue right on through because the Christmas spirit can't be stopped. Damn it, I gave away what time of year it was. Anyway, okay, cool. That's amazing. And I'm a person who's also kind of a nerd. I'm a nerd who like knows nothing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a nerd about it, but I have no knowledge or information. I'm just like, yeah, that ball flying through the air, like that looks incredible. And I do find that interesting. I also really love, and as someone who is not a player, I could never do any of this, but I love to watch like an outside back cross a ball like over the entire field, switch a play to a winger who's on the run, and it like lands in the corner right at their foot. That's one of the most impressive things to me too. Not in terms of like the aerodynamics of the ball spinning and curving, but just in terms of the accuracy of like, okay, Anyway, what else? So let's talk about your life in general. It's a pretty fascinating one. I know that you've lived in a lot of different countries and continents.
Yep.
And a lot of different cities, many different languages in these places that you've lived. So let's start at the beginning. What city, country, continent were you born in?
So at the very beginning, I was born in or on the continent of South America in Caracas, Venezuela, where my parents had met, have two sisters. We were all born there. After Venezuela's political situation kept going the wrong direction in some people's eyes.
Sure.
Some people, it was fine. But
Yep.
around 2007 2006 or 2007, my dad decided to get a job on the opposite side of the world in Thailand.
Cool.
And we just basically all got up and moved. I didn't really know Asia was a thing at the time when I was 8 years old.
Yep, of course.
I was learning about the colonization of the Americas in social studies.
Oh, you guys got taught that stuff?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? That's cool.
That's all I knew regarding geography and the world map.
Sure. People came from elsewhere. It's called Europe.
And then we moved to Thailand.
Yeah, yeah.
And my dad is fully Italian and my mom is Spanish Venezuelan. So they took their 3 kids and just moved to Thailand, where we were supposed to live for 3 to 4 years. I ended up finishing high school there.
Oh, wow.
My younger sister just finished high school there. She's 8 years younger than me, and they're still living there to this day.
Oh, wow. So that lasted a little longer. Yeah,
A little longer than 3 to 4
so
years.
you were supposed to head out of Thailand when you were like 13, 14 kind of thing. Yeah. And then you were like, actually, I'm now need to go to college.
Yeah,
So
visiting home back to Thailand while in college here.
Right, of
'cause
course.
The whole family's over there.
yeah,
So,
yeah, that makes sense. So talk to me a little bit about I had a really similar experience in that when I was 9, I moved from upstate New York to Nashville, Tennessee, and the culture shock was just crazy. Like, you wouldn't believe. I was like, people really wear cowboy boots like every day. So tell me a little bit about what it was like that you can remember as a kid moving to such a different culture and such a different, like literally the opposite side of the world, when you didn't even really understand what the world was yet, or that there was such a
or
thing as
even
Asia.
know the language.
Yeah, or the language, for example. Huge important part. Like, talk to me a little bit about what you remember about that.
So when I was 8 or 7-ish, I want to say, is when we moved to Thailand. And like I mentioned, I had no idea that Asia was a thing. But coming from a European and Latin culture, you really, even at a young age, you start to see a bit of the difference between what's accepted, not accepted. But in the beginning, it's more of a language barrier where you didn't just move halfway across the world, but you don't know the language. Your friends aren't there. You have your family, which is not a bad thing to have, but it's not the same when you just get thrown in a new school, don't know anybody. Going to the schools that you go to in Thailand, even when they're international students, there's 2 international students and the rest of people are all Asian. Like, my graduating class was 19 Asians and me, which is not a bad thing, but you don't get to grow up the same as you would in other places.
Sure.
So
Or it's that you're sort of the vast minority, right? Which I'm sure, people have had that experience in other cultures, I'm sure in different scenarios that are similar to that, but that's such a unique one because you have already a pretty complicated cultural background just on your own, right?
I agree.
Having parents from different continents you're having parents, is your mother born in Venezuela?
Yeah.
Yeah. So having parents from different continents on its own is sort of like a unique thing. And then also at 8 years old or 7 years old, throw in, you're going to grow up in Thailand now. So how long did it take you to sort of like start to adapt more, or like start to, make friends and play sports? Was soccer a part of that for you as a kid?
So it took a while to get adjusted to the different culture with not knowing the language and what we talked about. But one thing that doesn't matter if I'm 8 years old, 18, 24, if I get to kick a ball around with people, if I know them or if I don't know them, then it's pretty much automatic for me to make friends. Where yes, you might meet some people that you don't like or that you don't get along with. Somebody kicked you or you kicked them, but kicking the ball around is really the one place where don't really think about anything else. And at the end of the day, it's always friendly. Unless there's a referee with a whistle, I'm most likely a nice guy. If the referee's there, don't ask around, but I might not be the nicest person.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar. I've seen a lot of your work. Yeah, that's awesome. So would you say it like, did the game, I assume, and I'm gonna rewind a tiny bit. Did the game, was the game a big part of your life as a kid in Venezuela before you moved?
Massive part.
Okay.
Basically, since I can remember, there's always been a ball with me, and I obviously got the opportunity to play football, which I'm fortunate enough to do in the different places and even now while I work. But ever since I can remember, and this is what I tell people, that's my first love, is the ball. Not the basketball, volleyball, it's the football.
Yeah.
That's all I really need to be happy. Obviously, I need to pay rent, so it doesn't work out like that anymore. But
hey, you know, we got to do.
Could be worse. Could be worse.
We're all working 80-hour weeks around here, you know, doing what we love. Yeah. And what was your, like, prior to getting back to Thailand? What was like what kind of soccer were you playing? Football were you playing in Venezuela? Were you playing at school? Were you playing mostly like futsal on like courts outside? Were you in a club? What was your sort of like soccer life like as a kid in Venezuela?
So soccer life as a kid in Venezuela works a bit differently than the US, where it's more tailored towards the Latin American or European structure, where when I left Venezuela, and I just talked to my mom about this when I visited home a couple weeks ago, but I was still registered nationally for 3 years after that, because we're from the age of 7 years onwards, when you get registered to these national leagues, you're traveling across the whole country. Venezuela is not the US, so it's not as much travel, but we would do tournaments in Brazil and different things like that, where at 7 or 8 years old, you're playing an 11-a-side game.
Wow.
It's not just the little leagues or playing futsal. There's a lot of futsal that we played, and concrete at recess at school because there was no grass. So no matter where, if you can put 2 shoes down, well, 4 shoes for 2 goals and a ball, then most likely going to be playing.
You
but
can find a big rock somewhere, probably, just to
anything that'll stay put.
Yeah, if one person's only got 1 shoe, you're not in that much trouble. You can figure it out. Yeah, that's awesome. And then what was the game like, or the culture like around the game? The difference was, I'm sure, pretty extreme, right? Like between growing up in Venezuela and now being in Thailand, like, and being in both at a pretty similar age, right? Like you had those transitional years right between the two. What were the things that you noticed most about the game in Thailand versus in Venezuela?
The biggest thing was that the amount of organized football was a lot lower. So the different things that I already lived through as a 8-year-old in Venezuela, with being a nationally registered player in Thailand, unless you were Thai or you had connections to professional teams' academies, then playing 11-a-side where I lived was not possible, because there just weren't kids, there weren't teams. Slowly, as I grew up, there was a club that was funded by one of my best friend's parents, because they were tearing up their front yard, and their dad was tired of redoing the grass, buying them a new goal, new net. Out of nowhere, he decided to start a club that now frequents like 400 children every week.
Wow.
Because they went from starting out the club with a under 13 team, which was kids my age from around the area who were decent at football, and they wanted to play more seriously, train more, get an opportunity to play 11-a-side. That all started on a 6-a-side field. To kind of paint the picture, that 6-a-side field now has a 5-a-side field behind it, a basketball multi-purpose court, and they also happened to build an 11-a-side AstroTurf pitch the size of Old Trafford,
Now we're
15
talking.
minutes away.
Okay, yeah. So they've really grown into the thing, it sounds like. Yeah. And is that something that you saw as you were growing up there too? Is like not obviously that's a pretty unique case with that one dad who's just like going through the midlife crisis and needs to make it happen. Of course, like we all remember that dad. Thank God for that dad, though.
Thank God for that dad.
You don't have that 11-a-side turf field in that neighborhood, do you?
Yeah.
But do you remember like the game growing into the community and into the culture in Thailand outside of just that specific instance, or is it still a pretty slow build in terms of that? That same neighborhood part of Thailand you were in. Do you see it having grown since you moved there?
It's definitely grown a lot since I moved there, not just football, soccer-wise, but generally in Thailand, it's built off tourism. So the more you build, the more attraction, the more foreigners come and spend money. But on the footballing aspect, another thing that more and more leagues do nowadays that the Thai league has also been adopting is bringing in foreign players.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, it's not really something that's still too open because every team has a limit of 2 or 3 registered foreign players. So you can imagine in a squad of 25 to 30, if you're not Asian, then you must be pretty good or be getting paid the big bucks. And slowly that's growing. They're supposed to be updating some of those rules in the federation, but it was the same thing for me when I was 14 or 15. I went to play for Chonburi FC's academy, which Chonburi FC has kind of dropped off in the recent years because of money problems.
Sure.
But
they're a first division club over there, otherwise. So.
Yeah, that used to be like the gold standard for a club with the most trophies, the best players, and because of the infrastructure and how those things were ran, it didn't go their way. But even getting to train with them, I could only be one of 3 foreign kids. So that was a hassle. Getting the connection to play at a more competitive level was difficult when I was younger in Thailand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How long did it take you to, do you speak the language fluently now?
I wish.
Do you speak it though? You get by?
I can get by ordering food, getting gas. My friends, if they hear this, they'll make fun of me because they still make fun of my accent. But
For sure.
I used to have a little bit more Thai, but moving to the US, I don't really practice it.
Yeah. You still have a lot of friends over there though. You have like people you go back for holidays and stuff still. Your
back
whole
for
family's still there. That's sort of like that's your home basically. Like you fly back home to see your family. And that's
for me, home is Thailand.
Yeah.
Even if I was born in Venezuela, I'm not Asian, but
Sure.
home is Thailand and mostly where the people are.
Yeah, of course. Home is where the heart is, That's what they say.
Not to get emotional, but
not to get
it's the
emotional
truth.
about it, but wow. So I'm gonna stay in Thailand a little bit longer, and then we're gonna take a very brief break, and then we're gonna come back to moving to Chicago and your time in college. What's your favorite visual memory of living in Thailand? If you could paint a picture for the audience of the thing you find most beautiful about Thailand, and what your view would be if you were transported there right now.
Definitely any of the beaches that you can go to, which the best thing is to go island hopping instead of bar hopping. You just pay a reduced fee, which could be 33 cents to get on a ferry and hop between island to island. But
I got that.
Crystalline water, low price beer. You just have a lot of fun and you get to do almost anything you want. Obviously, erring on the side of safety.
Sure.
But just imagine a calm beach, hot day, see-through water, and a good group of your friends. You're getting ready to either go to the beach or continue island hopping.
Oh, man. Yeah, that does sound pretty good. I'm going to be honest with you. Well, we're going to take a quick break before my envy becomes too palpable for either of us or our entire audience listening in. We're going to take a quick break from our sponsors, I hope. We'll be right back. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, abuelitas and abuelitos, we're back. Thank you so much to our sponsors for that message. We love your products. If we weren't able to secure a sponsor by the time this comes out, shame on y'all for not taking the opportunity to be a part of this. Anyway, moving right along, I'd like to talk a little bit about your third continent of residement. You moved to the U.S. to go to college. Basically, you got up to the age of 18 in Thailand, high school, finished that. You've made friends. You're playing soccer there. This new club arises. This guy built a field for all the kids. He's a hero. He's a legend. And now you're like, I need to go learn how to build rockets. So you went to Purdue, correct?
Yes.
So tell me about what it was like to move to the U.S. for the first time. Had you been to the U.S. before?
I had been here to Atlanta twice when I was like 15 and 16 because some random Dutch guy saw me play. So he was like, come play in Atlanta.
That's cool.
Did a couple showcases and things like that. But then I never heard from the guy after that. So
yeah, you just can't trust anyone in this business.
Such is life.
Such
you
is
never
life.
know.
That's life. You just don't. But you know what? I'm glad you went because Atlanta's a good city. I like Atlanta a lot. My dad lives in Atlanta. Hey, Dad. Hope you're listening to this. If you're not, then no one is. So you had been to the U.S. before, but you had never lived here. You went to Purdue, and what year did you go to Purdue?
Yeah, so I graduated high school May 2017. Okay. So August 2017, I hopped off a plane with my dad. Never been to Purdue, never visited Indiana. We landed in Chicago, rented a car, and started driving. And I didn't know why there was so much corn. There was corn everywhere besides up. Oh, yeah. And that went on for hours. Yeah. So I was a bit worried heading to college.
Yeah. You were like, is it weird that it feels like a cult, even though there's no people? Like, just the corn alone, you're sort of like, this is some kind of weird ritual.
And the windmills too, when it's early.
Yeah. Yep.
But it was obviously a different experience, kind of like moving to Thailand when I was a little kid, where you're thrust into different type of culture, expectations. People go out differently. People dress differently. They speak differently too. But Purdue was a great experience. It's not much else to do besides go out and study. So it was football, soccer, go out and study. And there I started to notice some of the differences on the European football I had been brought up with and the Asian side I grew up with around. I never had many Asian coaches. They were mostly English people, but you can see from the way Thai football is played that they have their own way of doing things on the field. Coming to America, I never played on any NCAA level. I was strictly club soccer. And the first game, I thought I was playing rugby.
Yeah.
Here, I'd experienced physicality because even in Thailand, our training matches when I was 17 was playing 11-a-side team of African guys against our club team, and we were a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds playing grown men. Sure. So physicality.
I imagine you learned a lot that day.
A lot of elbows through the many weeks and doing flips in the air from tackles. But when I came here, it was a complete different side of physicality where I almost want to use the word brute. but
Oh, sure.
it's basically
It's been said about
just
Americans before.
kicking-
You wouldn't be the first.
kicking, not knowing where the ball is, just swinging and missing, or swinging and hitting someone, which I know that it's not the biggest sport, so not many grow up with it, but there's also a bunch of extremely talented players that you meet here, and I feel that because of that brute physicality, you do notice those people who are just a step ahead on stepping to the side of a tackle or something of the sort, where
Avoiding the brute.
you can avoid that because you know it's coming, and that comes with experience. Here, you don't really get to play as often too, so I think that plays a huge role. Where I grew up, you have to spend money to have a turf field. Here, if you don't have a turf field, you're spending more money. So even from that standpoint, there's a lot of learnings from switching continents in football. But Chicago has a lot more fields than I expected overall.
Yeah. Chicago does have a lot of fields. I mean, that's the thing that I think is interesting, is that Chicago is a giant city. It's a metropolis, so it has metropolis levels of resources. It's how the resources are used and allocated or not that I think is the issue in a lot of cases, and that, like, the Chicago Fire, to their credit, shout out to Jessica Yabitz at the Chicago Fire Foundation. What's up, girl? They built like 50 futsal courts around the city, like in every part of the city over the course of the last, 10 years, maybe less than that. But that's an enormous investment, right? And like, that's a really, really cool thing to have. I think that the issue is, if there isn't a culture and an infrastructure there to use it, then it's just kind of sitting there, not necessarily helping the ecosystem look and feel better. It's just sort of, we've got a lot of canvases and not a lot of paint.
Yeah.
You know?
And that was one of the first things I noticed when I moved to Chicago. It was cold, November 1st,
Yeah,
2021.
That's the first thing
It
you noticed,
wasn't
I'm
it
sure.
wasn't summertime.
Compared to Venezuela and Thailand, Chicago was cold? You're kidding.
Yes, but the biggest thing I noticed is that when I started work, my company used to be based out of Skokie. So the first time I went to work, I'm pretty sure I counted 25 football, soccer fields that were all grass in my first month and a half, 2 months. I know that it's cold, but I didn't see a single kid or adult out there on the field.
Yeah.
Which I think is what you're talking about.
Yes, it's true. Exactly. And I think, you're not interviewing me, Roberto, okay? We're not going to just go into use of public space now and at the end of the show. Nice try. But you were at Purdue, which is like a D1 national and NCAA soccer program.
Title IX.
Yeah. Oh, is there no men's team there?
There is no men's team.
Oh, okay.
If you go to Purdue Northwest,
do not even have time to get into this necessarily, but Purdue Northwest does have a men's team.
D2 or D3.
D3. Okay. So listeners, if you don't know what we're talking about, I am going to explain this very briefly. So, in my opinion, a very good thing for female athletes in the U.S. and in college sports, Title IX basically dictates that you have to have the same amount of student athletes who are on women's or men's sports programs. They have to be equal on either side, right? Which means that you can only have a certain amount of sports. Yeah, there's only so much money to go around, and the money needs to be spent equally and equitably. And so what that often means is that some men's sports that are less popular in the face of American football, this is a whole other podcast episode.
I know.
But because of American football and the amount of fucking players on those teams, there can't be a soccer team at a lot of NCAA Division I programs because there's just too many male athletes. Because obviously there is no women's American football team, but there definitely is a women's soccer team, right? So the most equitable thing to do would be to say, well, we've got a women's team in this and we have a men's team in this. They should probably stay because that's equal. But no, they don't do that. They say, we need to keep these 120 men happy.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to continue on. So you're at Purdue. You're witnessing NCAA college soccer for the first time, right? Did you go to any games? Did you like go see any soccer games? Did you not even do it?
There is no NCAA because of Title IX.
Did you go to any women's games ever?
We were denied playing against the girls team,
Oh.
and I went to one game because the field was the number 1 ranked grass field in the Midwest.
Ooh, I bet it was nice looking. Okay, so would you say that as a college club player, was there like antagonism between like the club sports and the like NCAA Division I athletes or anything? Or because you were the only men's soccer team at the college, was it opposite in that you felt like the best men's soccer players at this college is us?
100%. The second statement.
Yeah.
100%.
Cool. That's awesome.
And the crazy thing about the Purdue club team is that, like any other club team, people pay dues and some have coaches. We did everything we did, winning an open national title with 0 coaches, medical staff. So the funny part was when I'm making a sub while I'm on the field, and then you have the manager, assistant manager, and the 2 medics from the opposing team yelling at me because I can't interfere with substitutions. But we had a president who ran the club, a vice president, a treasurer, people who organize things so that we had money to go to nationals, which was in Texas, little things like that. But no coaches, fully student run, which obviously caused some problems during some of the years that I was there.
It was fun, I bet.
But we had quite a bit of fun. All deciding what happens. There's 3 of us deciding everything.
Of course. I'm gonna segue from there. You won a national championship, which is awesome. Was that sort of like, was that the most fun you've had winning something in college club soccer, or was there a youth thing that sort of supersedes that for you?
In college club soccer, it was definitely the most fun thing because the first 2 years I did not agree with the club president.
Okay.
And we didn't become anything as a team. And
We're not going to
when
name names, but you know
that
who you
person left, they know who they are.
They know who they are.
We won open nationals just the year after. It was the exact same players with like 2 new freshmen. So
that tells you a lot.
Beyond my control.
You're like Nottingham Forest in 1976. As soon as Brian Clough shows up, things change. Cool. What are your 3 favorite memories in the game of soccer? Oh my God. I'm trying to hold my microphone all cool. What are your 3 favorite memories through the lens of soccer in Venezuela as a little kid, in Thailand as like a teenager or tween, and as an adult now in the US? Like, give me 3 moments that you'd pick.
So in Venezuela, my only memory of ever watching a football soccer game on TV was the 2006 World Cup final, where I had no idea who was playing, even though it was Italy versus France.
Yeah,
and
that's Zidane's headbutt, if I'm not mistaken.
I watched that headbutt, and instead of not liking him, I fell in love with that bald player.
Of course, so did I.
I couldn't believe what I was watching, but
that was so cool.
Before the headbutt, the things he did on the field just left me mesmerized. It's like the headbutt never happened.
Yeah,
so
totally.
As a kid, definitely that memory.
Sick.
As a teenager in Thailand, staying up until 4 or 5 a.m. during the Champions League because of the time difference, and doing that throughout high school and having my mom yell at me. But those 4 or 5 a.m. celebrations, since I'm a Real Madrid fan, I haven't suffered too much in the last decade with Champions League.
Yep.
Watching those, just run along. But watching those was amazing. And then,
and that's like peak,
that's like
Marcelo,
peak football. That's
like young Marcelo,
like Mourinho would say. That's football heritage.
Football heritage. Yeah.
There's no other word I could use for it.
Wait, no. You're talking about 2007.
No, I'm talking about 2014, 2000.
15. Okay.
No, 15 was Barcelona.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that year.
Well,
16, 17, 18, the
depends
three-peat.
on who we are. Then again, okay. So what's your answer for the U.S.? What's your
For
favorite memory for
the
for your
US?
soccer? Is it a repeat? Is it also the national championship with Purdue?
No, it wasn't at least something that I took part in. I think one experience I didn't expect that left me a bit surprised with the culture here in the US is when the Euros happened, not the most recent ones where Spain won, which means I won.
Yeah.
But the previous ones, Italy against England, all my best friends from Thailand growing up are English. So there was a lot of talking back and forth with them. But I was in New York and being in a bar that was half English, all dressed in white, half Italian with my side, and everyone exploding as I would expect to happen in Europe was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I knew one person at the bar, but it's like I knew everyone at the end of the game.
Yep. That's like the perfect explanation of adulthood hitting you as a soccer fan, right? Where you're like, the first time, and this hit me very late, but the first time you're like in a bar at a very weird time of day, either really late or really
11 a.m.
early.
for me.
Yeah, exactly. Like very weird time of day. And like a goal happens and like an entire, like 200 people just scream at the top of their lungs at 9 a.m. and like a few people are already pretty drunk. And it's like, even if you're just having coffee, there's this euphoric feeling of like, you're really not going to get to scream with 200 people in an enclosed space in the winter at 9 a.m. for any other reason, basically, unless you're in like some very extreme cult. So that's a great answer. I'm going to go through a few of these rapid fire questions
I'm ready.
because we're right at the end of the pod. We're right at the end of the episode here, folks. Okay. You gave me your top 3 global soccer experiences, which is great. So our quick fire questions are as follows, and I think I might know the answer to a couple of these already. One player you would go back in time to watch live from the nosebleeds.
Zidane.
I figured you were going to say
Any
that.
day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. What era? Like what year would you go back to and what team would you watch him on?
I would probably watch him when he was at Juventus, when he was the most free from the YouTube highlight videos I've seen.
Yes.
A little less stars around him, still a bunch of amazing players, but there he was just unleashed.
Yeah, yeah. And he was very much able to kind of like, all right, you've got the brush, you paint, you do your thing. Yeah, okay. One player you would choose to avoid going back in time to play against.
Play against. There's a couple of those, but I think Pepe.
Yeah.
Yefinitely avoid playing
You wouldn't
against
even have
Pepe.
to go back in time. You could go play him right now. He's still playing.
Playing
Actually,
at 40 plus.
What year would you avoid going back to play Pepe?
Whenever he stepped on Messi's hand.
Yeah,
that was.
year,
I'm
yeah.
a Madrid fan, but that's wrong. That's unnecessary.
That's a fascinating and empathetic answer from you, and I'm very proud of you for that. Okay. One coach or mentor you would go back in time to ask for advice, either a coach you've had or like a person you admire in the game that you don't know.
I would probably go back and talk with one of my coaches who would be 30 now, but he died in a motorbike accident in Thailand. But that was basically our big brother for our whole teenage football team growing up. So if I could pick his brain, I definitely would. He left us a bit too soon.
What year was that?
That happened right before COVID.
Okay.
So
2019, 2018.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
2019. Yeah.
That's a very, very, very good answer. Some people are going to probably say Jose Mourinho to that question. So that was significantly more heartfelt. And I appreciate
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One city you would move to just to watch soccer.
Oh. This is a very difficult quick fire question.
I know it is.
One, I would most likely move to London just because there's at least 6 Premier League clubs, not counting all the lower league sides.
That's probably your best bet for quality.
Atmosphere, quality, probably breweries or beer. Yeah, it's probably decent.
London's full of pubs, from what I understand. It's a good answer. Biggest soccer challenge in your life so far? The thing that has been the hardest to sort of get through as a soccer player or someone who loves soccer?
Not being able to play it as often as you want, mostly growing up and realizing, you have to pick a career path or keep playing soccer, but keeping your options open and realizing that it's never easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite childhood soccer memory?
Favorite childhood soccer memory was when I was wearing the yellow and black T90 boots and I scored an Olympico on a 6-a-side game. I was like 9 years old. So you can imagine the distance between the corner and the goal.
I mean, just the size of your leg. That's amazing. It's incredible. That's damn good. Where was that?
That was back home in Thailand.
That was in Thailand?
Yeah.
That was like one of your first couple of years there, too?
Probably the first 2 years.
Did that 100%. Make you like a bunch of friends?
Most definitely. Yeah, I think the goals, and that would help.
If I was like a good soccer player in Thailand who like wasn't your friend yet, that totally would have made me your friend. Advice for anyone who wants to learn more about soccer or football?
I think good advice is obviously watching it as much as you can, but when you watch it, I think the advice would be not to watch the ball and watch everything else that happens around the ball, because yes, the ball is part of the game, but without the other 22 people moving around, nothing's going to happen. So
beautiful. What a beautiful answer. Okay, so the final question of the episode is, if you've got a World Cup group, okay, and the group is, let's just say, North Korea is one. It's a whatever. Incredible that they made it, kind of a thing, right? And like, okay, it's a watch. They're number 4, probably. Okay. The other 3 are the United States, Thailand, and Venezuela. How do you want that to land when all things are considered?
Am I allowed to answer this honestly?
You are allowed to answer this however you want. And in fact, you're required to answer this honestly.
From first to last, or?
Yeah, I want you to give me 4 through 1. I want you to start at 4.
So for North Korea.
Legit. Yeah.
I think that's self-explanatory.
Yeah, we don't need to go into that. That's like a whole other podcast, actually.
3, I'm sorry, but it's the US of A, because
get out. I'm just kidding.
Because I have background on this.
Oh.
You guys make it to the World Cup every year because the qualifying is a joke. So let me just put that out on the podcast. Looking at the camera, it's a joke. Thailand doesn't have that excuse, but Venezuela does, because Venezuela has to qualify against good teams.
Yeah,
but
like 4 other countries.
Number 2 would be Thailand, for the simple reason that they've never been to a World Cup, unless I get fact checked and they did go to a World Cup. But that's home.
I got a feeling the fact checkers are going to come pretty hard for us.
I have some friends that play on that Thai national team.
No kidding.
So it would be amazing to see those guys, even if it's left or right bench, make it there and qualify. And
Vamos Venezuela.
Same thing goes for Venezuela. We've never qualified for a World Cup because we have to play Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, Ecuador, Uruguay, all these amazing nations. We could just qualify with Central America. We're pretty close.
Yeah,
we could just get shifted up there.
Yeah.
But Sorry, USA.
I got to tell you, I don't care how much redlining you do. Any way you look at a map in which Venezuela is not a part of South America, like that's ridiculous.
And we want to keep it that way. Just for the CONMEBOL qualifying, put us with the US and the Central American company.
Oh my God, yeah, I'm sure you'd love that. I'm sure.
Yeah, we'd make it as often as the US does.
You would make it a lot more often, I think. Got a good team. So anyway, I wanna first of all say thank you for being here. You're an awesome dude. You've been an awesome dude since you came to the club. I'm very grateful that you've put so much time into the club over the years. And you've got a great story and you've got a great perspective on the world and the game as a result of that story. So thank you for sharing it with us today. Because we are so happy to have you. You're going to walk out of here with that Edgewater Castle FC poster right over there. You're walking out of here with that poster as just because you spent time with us tonight. So thank you so much. We're gonna get that out of its case. But why don't we hand it to him and you can show it to the screen. So this is an original Caden McGreevy. Caden McGreevy was our original starting right back for a period of time, and he made these posters for our last season. So you're gonna walk away with this today. Thank you for everything, and thank you for being on the pod. It's been a lovely conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And listeners, thank you for being with us. It's very warm in this room. You may not be able to tell that, but there have been a lot of ghostly noises I've been referencing, and I think those are mostly boiling water being pushed through 100-year-old pipes above our heads. So we're going to wrap this thing up, but thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next one, and go Rooks.
Go Rooks.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one. Bye.
Ahoy there! Thank you for listening to Stone by Stone, an Edgewater Castle podcast. Be sure to listen to our next episode, or better yet, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, where you can find video versions of our episodes, Spotify, Apple Music, or anywhere else you get your podcast fix. We'll have a lot of exciting new content coming up throughout the year, and we want you to stay along for the ride. In fact, you should probably just follow us on all social media platforms also. Just to be safe. And with that, I leave you be. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for supporting the club, listening to the podcast, and as per usual, go Rooks.